Nikki, it's CPT. Okay, acronyms. Hang on.
Complex personality. Complex.
Let's try this one more time. 3, 2. Welcome to the Secrets of Life. Today we're going to be talking about CPTSD. Nikki, what is CPTSD?
CPTSD is a complex post-traumatic stress disorder.
Yes.
It is a combination of traumatic events happening in childhood mixed with current life and our responses to that. I didn't fully look this up, but I know from my experience, that's kind of what it is.
So I know that a lot of people around the world also have been diagnosed with this, and there's many, many others that have been undiagnosed. And what is the difference between complex post-traumatic stress disorder and PTSD?
PTSD is usually based on experience, like one solo experience or one time frame that is usually a shorter span. And then CPTSD is kind of like a bunch of traumatic events throughout life that just kind of build up that person into, all of CPTSD.
So not just childhood and adulthood, or
Yes.
Full childhood. Okay. So with that understanding, why do we talk about these events? We're a spiritual channel, so why would we discuss this at all?
Because I feel like, at least when I actually went to therapy and learned that I had it, it made so much sense as to why I was the way I was, how I reacted to people, how I reacted in social situations, how I reacted in relationships. A lot of people with relational CPTSD will have codependency. It's a huge thing. Or it could go the opposite direction and they can be addicted to substances of different varying kinds. But we all kind of develop our own response to stresses.
Today we're going to peruse Reddit on CPTSD. How do you cope with the trauma you still have to keep a secret? Oh, that's interesting. So it's something I have to do. So it's something I do have people I can tell. Okay, so they can tell their wife, their therapist, but nobody else. It's too big, complicated, would affect way too many people in huge ways. And even my therapist has said I can go legal, but it's too historic and the process might destroy me. But it's a trauma that makes me feel unrelatable to anybody else. It's just too massive and people can't understand how a parent could do that, or a mother, or even just a person could be that evil. I'm also an unrelatable person, CPTSD, yes, but also ASPD. And at one point was diagnosed with NPD, narcissistic.
Antisocial personality disorder, and that does seem like narcissistic personality disorder.
Okay, so they've had both antisocial and narcissistic. But I've dealt with that and continue to deal with that in therapy. I didn't react to my trauma in a way that makes me relatable to other survivors. I struggle with empathy. I'm hostile and isolating. I'm aggressive and I hit the red button a lot. I'm very messy as a person. And when I find myself in situations where I could potentially make new friends, I instead fight my way out like my life depends on it. How do you cope with a trauma that's that huge and a reaction that unrelatable? Okay, I can understand this. How do you cope with trauma that huge and a reaction that unrelatable? I've been angry my whole life because what happened to me was so huge and long-lasting and calculated and sadistic. And she's just out there living her life. There's no retribution and nobody is on my side because nobody knows. That's tough. That's extraordinarily tough. And I can relate to that feeling. Not the narcissistic personality disorder. Mine was lack of self-esteem. But the whole struggling with empathy and being hostile and isolating yourself, feeling aggressive and hitting the red button a lot. I don't know the red button, but like seeing red.
Yeah.
I've seen red.
I feel like I'm that way in not with friends as much, well, at least anymore, but in relationships, I'm very well. No, I'm not quick to anger though. But when I am angry, and when I'm finally at that point, then it's hard to get me back down.
Right. And you feel violent. I felt that. I felt like I needed to feel something break, especially when I was a teenager. Like I felt like I needed to just strangle somebody. So this guy sounds like he's been through the ringer, and guy or girl. Oh, it says Her Majesty Aries. So I guess it's a girl. And she sounds like she's disassociating herself from everything and just rage filled. So the question is, how do you deal with it? How do you cope with that? My personal input is to find constructive outlets that would help you create and put that anger into that, meaning like music, writing lyrics, writing poetry, novels, stuff that makes you really let it out in paper, because seeing it in paper sometimes helps immensely. Finding creative outlets like acting, dancing, something to be constructive. If you're not really artistic, maybe something else that's more, I don't know, robotics or something like that. Something that you know that you enjoy, but you can also put the thinking into it. Something that helped me with my rage issues is putting it on paper. Pros and cons. What do you like about yourself? You got to really start with yourself. I hate to say it, but I know the person did it to you, but you really have to start with you, the core of you. I think that that's where it all, because that's where all your emotions or lack of emotions are coming from, right?
This one's a little harder for me, I think. So I know a lot of people that are raised by narcissists, not a lot. There are many that then are created and are turned into a narcissist because of that behavior and how much of themselves they had to shut down in order to survive. I've actually watched some people talk about their narcissism, which is interesting as they're trying to recover. But I can understand how hard it is to know that a person that has harmed you so horribly is still alive. It sounds really weird, but is still out there, still living their life, not like locked up, not, stuck in a cell. So I find it really hard to figure out the best way to deal with those emotions. Fire helps, like writing such an angry letter, and burning it. And as many times as you want to just scream at that person writing that letter and watching it burn, or I feel like for this person, welding would be fun.
Oh, that's a good, like mechanics, working with your hands.
Yeah, something that you can something that's heavy that,
really get in there.
Really something that you enjoy doing, but helps get that feeling out.
As somebody who has had a father who was narcissistic and lacked empathy, I feel like they went through a lot more trauma. I don't know. Trauma is trauma, but it sounds like they went through SA. That's what it sounds like. Potentially, I don't even want to imagine. But for me personally, I think that, well, first of all, they are talking to a therapist, which is great. I think what they should start with is them. They're like, what is it inside? Like, obviously they're angry. So let's get to the point. Like, what are the different things? What are the events that you remember? And you're just going to have to peel off layer by layer and start at the earliest memory and or the latest memory and work your way backwards, like inner child work. It sounds like they're going to have to do a lot of inner child work. Mm-hmm. What another controversial thing I've heard is that hypnosis therapy. There's one where you can actually get to where they can talk to an empty chair, and the empty chair represents the person they're mad at, and it helps get you get into a hypnotic theta state where you can yell or scream or do whatever it is to release those pent-up emotions. That's another possibility. That might be something to look into.
Mm-hmm. I used to do theta where I know for me, with a lot of my inner child or my maternal stuff that I was working through, would be like going within and having, like, envisioning yourself with that person, mostly talking if you're at that state, but pretty much any way until you start getting those feelings out, and then over time you start being able to develop a different story. And you start, the other part of that is like, then you start reparenting yourself as a kid. So you start seeing yourself growing up the way that you wanted to be, like you wanted to be treated as a kid by a parent. So essentially then you start reparenting yourself and imagining yourself being reparented. And that kind of calms your inner child. I mean, it doesn't erase everything that happened, but it distances that rage from that memory so that you can then kind of go into it from a different angle.
Like, subscribe, comment,